study session. Do we have the comments?
We do. We have 3 on Hidden Lakes.
Okay, I'll wait till we get to that agenda item and we call them up then. Items to be placed on the regular city commission agenda is our minutes from our June 21st regular meeting and our June 26th study session. Commissioners, to review those. We okay with moving that on to the agenda for? Let me get back up to speed here real quick.
The 19th.
The 19th, thank you, for the 19th
Of this month.
of this month. I think we have another one coming up. All right, thank you. All right, items for presentation and discussion. Item A is the continued discussion of Hidden Lake subdivision phase 1 final plat. I believe our city commissioner or city manager has some updates for us, and then I believe David Hamby is on. David, how are you? Good, good. Didn't see you. All right, what do you got for us?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the city engineer, the developers and the area residents for showing up and communicating with us to express your concerns. And so we all try and move this much needed project forward to work to yes, so to speak. We'll have this for discussion, not only at today's meeting. Hopefully we can answer all applicable questions today, and then we'll also have it presented for the 17th for review and consideration, and anything that may arise between now and then or require additional research. And then ideally have the final plat presented for review and consideration on the 19th at 10 a.m. And just to remind folks, we've had a lot of discussions about the project and the process, and what we're actually considering is the final plat, which is essentially easements and right of way. And we're getting a lot of understandably questions and concerns about the construction, but as we have in our development policy, which is available for download from our website, the next step of the process. So I just kind of wanted to remind everyone that this is mainly for approval of the easements and right of way with the final plat. And then a lot of the drainage and construction concerns and whatnot are addressed in the development agreement. And they can be placed on the plat, but we utilize the development agreement process. And so the way that our policy is structured, that's what it says is the next step. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jenna and Melanie for review, consideration, and additional follow-up.
Good afternoon, Director Landis.
Hello. Thank you. I apologize, Jenna's out this afternoon. So this is, I think, just a brief summary of where we've come so far. In your packet was a memo as well as a draft of the final plat, as well as some other maps. And we've discussed this at one previous study session with you. It's been to the Planning Commission, both for the preliminary plat, for the variance for the 19th Street, as well as back to the City Commission for that variance. It's also been to the Planning Commission and a public hearing forum, and then also approved by the Planning Commission to bring that to you for your approval of the final plat and to move the project forward. These are just as a reminder, it is zoned R2, which is what the area is already zoned for, as well as just a general location map. This is just a reminder. It's in the slides, just as a reminder of what your city manager has already outlined for you as far as a timeline for the approval process for this. And we could look at the maps again, but really we've done that already, and you had some questions, just as he's already stated, and we wanted to bring to you the professionals that could answer those questions for you specifically. And so really, I'd like to, I guess, invite our city engineer, David Hamby, to join us. And then also, if you have specific questions of the development team, they are here as well.
Hello, David.
Hello.
So commissioners, I know we've had some questions and some public opinion on, how we feel about stormwater and everything, and I guess I'll start off. It's not really even a question at this point, because I think you've kind of answered a question for me is, or maybe you can. So if we move forward on the final plat, we can have some of these discussions on the development agreement down the road, correct?
We can.
Okay.
Largely, what's already been proposed, it is drawn into the infrastructure drawings, and we use those cost estimates to put into the development agreement. The development agreement is there to protect the city should the development not move forward at any point during the entire project. And so the developer will put forth a letter of credit or a deposit, and an escrow deposit or whatnot with the city, but that's designed largely around those public infrastructure plans. So the items such as the driveways could be added to the street expansion piece of the infrastructure, and we can ensure that that is covered in the development agreement. Right now, the stormwater drawings, as well as the 19th Street extension, as well as any water and sewer, have been addressed already, and to this point have been signed off on in this process. And so we would just naturally take that infrastructure cost and include it in the development agreement, along with the language that is traditionally there, which is a protection for the city, like I said, as we move forward. And so we wouldn't traditionally address more of the stormwater issues if that's the concern, or even the driveway issues after this point. But like I said, they've been addressed in our process before we got to this point with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that fair?
Yeah, just to make it clear, the sanitary sewer plans have already been approved, sent to KDHE for the review and approval. The street storm, we're down to just a final few review items that need to be taken care of before that's signed off on. And the driveways are shown on the plans today.
Okay,
So,
great,
Yep.
thank you.
So commissioners, do you have any questions for David as he's here today?
Well, I guess I'd like for you to go ahead and tell us about the storm water drainage, so it'll fill the retention pond and release slowly. So tell us what about where it drains and what kind of rate of flow that would drain out of during a, say, a 3-inch rain.
just to give you a quick recap, the city has a stormwater management policy in place since 2008. And this project was designed in accordance with that. And that's kind of industry standard for, basically that requires that the developer or his engineer provide plans so that for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm, that the existing runoff isn't exceeded. And so that's what the study has indicated and designed around, is that the flow to the discharge point today, which is on the north property line, is not exceeded in the 2, 10, and 100-year storm. It actually reduces it slightly from that point. There's an outflow structure that's put into place that has a couple of orifices and weirs that work together to reduce that outflow rate. There's about 80,000 cubic feet of volume available in that detention pond that's used in a 100-year storm. And so that allows the water to not exceed the peak runoff rate that's happening today. So
I just want to make sure I clarify that. And so there's, you say the current flow through there is X. This, once it's done, will even be less than what that currently is flowing through there today.
just to give you an example, there's to that north runoff point, there's 56 cubic feet per second that's running there today in existing flow. After they do the development, if they didn't put it in detention, that would be 75 CFS. Okay. With the detention, it backs back down to about 52. So they're going from 56 to 52. This is in a 100-year storm.
This is already figured in after every house and every driveway and every, impermeable.
After
property
full
is
full
done.
development.
Full
Correct.
development.
Yep.
Okay. That retention pond is pretty good size, it looks like. How much is it over? What kind of water level are we looking at there?
It's about 3.5 feet deep in the 100-year storm with 1 foot of freeboard to the top of the berm. And it's again about 80,000 cubic feet.
Feet of water. Okay.
So that
So
means 4.5 feet from the base of the detention pond to the top of the sides of what we would consider to be the top of the detention pond.
Correct.
That, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I roughly had 7.5 gallons, 7.48 per cubic foot, so that's 598,000 gallons roughly is what that holds at 80,000 cubic feet,
You said 500,000 gallons?
598,000 gallons.
Probably. I didn't do the
Yeah.
calculation, but just for the 100-year storm, it's a little over 9 inches of rainfall. So that gives you an idea of the peak 100-year storm event.
What's the time frame on that 9 inches?
So this is figured over a 12-hour storm. Sometimes on larger watersheds, use a 24-hour storm. On smaller watersheds, use a smaller storm.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions for David?
Again, so this would be 2 engineers looking at this. We got Anderson and then you guys. And so 2 sets of eyes looking at this, reviewing to make sure the numbers all work and all as best we can project anyway, I guess you're saying, right?
Yeah, they provide the seal on it as a licensed professional engineer, and then I review it on behalf of the city.
I might mention that earlier in our discussions, David mentioned that this has gone through multiple revisions before it ever was signed off on from his firm as well. So it's not like it just comes in and they take a quick cursory review when they sign off. They have had multiple revisions of this to make sure that it did adhere to our policy.
So can you kind of elaborate on some of those revisions? Like I'm just speaking, maybe they came in at a smaller depth and then that was revised or something like that.
So a lot of times, it's just getting additional information. I want enough information in here that I can recreate the study. So that's a lot of times it's just gathering that information. Sometimes it's the assumptions that are made, the rainfall rates. So in the 2008 policy, it talked about using KDOT rainfall intensity rates, which were done in 1997. As we know, the rainfall rates are increasing. And so the most current ones that we've used right now are the Atlas 14, National Oceanic and NOAA rainfall rates. And so we ask them to use those because they're a little higher. And so that's an important part of that as well. So assumptions of maybe land use, making sure they match for the outlet structure, make sure their design matches the construction plans, that type of thing. So there's just a lot of clarification in there most of the time.
Commissioners, any other questions for David?
When I met with David earlier, I did ask questions about, and rightfully so, I understand that you hadn't done a tremendous amount of research on the updated floodplain that was brought into just really put into effect, I think, 2021. And so, but then we pulled it up and I didn't, to the layman's eyes, notice any changes that would affect this particular property. And is that what you were noticing, or is that?
Right, there's not any immediate effect on the floodplain on this property or immediately to the north. The floodplain is located over inside the quarry area, the old quarry area.
Any other questions? Okay. Have any other questions for Director Landis?
Or for the developer, they are here in person if
Do
you.
we have any questions for them also? Commissioners? All right, let me move to public comment. I'll bring up the 3 individuals that signed up for that, and that might bring up some more questions. Before I do, let me read the statement that we have here. Subject to the above restrictions, persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items on the agenda may do so as the agenda item is called. Persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items not on the agenda and that are under the jurisdiction of the city commission may do so at this time when called upon by the mayor. Comments on personnel matters and matters pending in court or with other outside tribunals are not permitted. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and any presentation is for informational purposes only. The governing body will take comments under advisement. Mrs. Reed, who do you have for our first public comment?
Gary Harris.
Gary, please come on up. Please state your name for the record.
Gary Harris, 1801 South Princeton,
Welcome, Gary.
Ottawa, Kansas. Thank you. You've all, I'm assuming, got a copy of this. Everybody's seen it. I'm assuming you've all read it, so I won't go over that. Since this was sent out, I have met with Mr. Silcott. Mr. Silcott and Mr. Clayton have both come out and taken a look at the property to actually lay an eyeball on my concerns. Mr. Crowley, you and I visited a little bit about it. An example I'm going to use here is, Mr. Crowley, let's say you and I own two houses right next door to each other, and they've both been there for, say, 60, 70 years. On my side of the property line, I've got a really thick row of bushes, and okay, at this point in time, all of my rainwater runs off of my roof, filters through the grass, filters through the bushes, and runs off onto your property, and it's not an issue. I'm going to take those bushes out because I don't like looking at them anymore, and I think I'm going to pour a concrete sidewalk or a driveway down along the side of my house. And I think I'm going to put gutters on. So all of that rainfall coming off of my roof is now hitting concrete. It's being funneled into the gutters, and I'm going to put my gutter extensions down there just in on my side of the property. So what I'm essentially doing is focusing all of that water and speeding it up and dumping it onto your property. Was it an issue before? No, because we had a lot of grass area for it to soak into. The grass slowed the flow down. The bushes slowed the flow down. What we're doing here with this, the way they're building this development, all they're doing is basically the same thing I've just described to you on a much larger scale. So, and we all know, we all know a rain event, let's just say, for example, 2 inches in an hour is a whole lot different in April when the ground's already saturated from the winter moisture than it is in July and August when we've got inch-wide cracks for the water to run off into. So to take a 2-inch, base everything off of a 2-inch rainfall, what time of year? What time of year are we looking at? I don't believe that's taken into consideration in the formula. Right now, the area is covered with waist-high, very dense vegetation. There's a thick, dense growth of trees down the middle. All of that is slowing that water down before it hits my property. Now, Mr. Hanby did answer one of my questions earlier on the way the outfall structure is built. There's, Karen, open that up, please. I'm doing this for clarification point. The orifice structure coming into that outlet structure is this. There's a plate bolted to the front of the structure. These 10 2-inch holes right here are going to slow that water down going into that structure. Now, once it leaves that structure, it's leaving in 2 30-inch diameter pipes. So this is going to slow it down, and it's going to work until the rain exceeds and goes over the top of what they're referring in their plans as the emergency spillway. And I'm not going to take the time to pull the elevation off of that because I can't read it anyway. It's too small. So that's, now the fact that the city has problems already with grass and sticks and leaves plugging up their large street grates. This is going to be a major problem for the developer. Now, granted, that's the developer's problem, not mine, but once those plug, it goes over the emergency spillway and dumps into the structure. There's no control over it. I mean, there's 10 2-inch holes. That's a 2-inch hole. Right there. We all, like I said, we all know how fast the street grates plug up. Leaves, sticks, whatever, people blowing their grass clippings and that kind of stuff into it. So anyway, conversation, Mr. Hanby at the beginning of the meeting answered a lot of my questions though, so I'm trying to sort through this, so I'm not beating a dead horse till it completely stinks. Mr. Handy said that this was designed to the 2008 standards. My question would be, why is it the 2008 standards, and what, if I'm not mistaken, the most current standards are 2021? Now, maybe Mr. Handy can correct me if I'm wrong. Is 2021 the most current?
I was talking about the resolution that's adopted in 2008.
Okay, pardon me then. I'm gonna jump to the fence. The fence issue. We've talked about it. We've talked about it for the purpose of the trash. We are a full city block away from Price Chopper. When Price Chopper was built, we had a lot of trash issues. There's going to be an immense amount of trash created by the construction of 24, 25 structures. I'm in construction, it happens. But I had to pick up a lot of trash from Price Chopper. I don't want to be picking up their trash too. Then we had the security issue of it as far as I run a business there. Now, I don't have a lot of equipment stored down there, but I do have some trucks and a few small pieces of equipment. Little boys are going to be little boys. They're going to go check it out. The fact that it's on somebody else's property line, well, they're 10-year-old little boys. They don't care, or they don't realize the seriousness of it. So we have that. With that many people right there, probably small families, it's putting me at risk of a lawsuit if somebody comes over on my property and gets hurt. If there's a fence there, at least that's going to hopefully limit my liability to a point. And then we have the privacy issues. These houses, or at least the west row of houses on the west street, they're backed up against all of those houses and then up against my lawn. If I'm out there, say 6 o'clock in the morning, getting ready to go to work and turning around with the headlights on, what have you, my headlights are going to be shining all over these houses. The people in the development, they're going to be looking in the back doors of the people that are already there, and the people that are already there are going to have a straight shot of view into the others. I don't think a fence, especially due to the fact that this is going to be an HOA, I don't think a fence around the border of the property that borders other property owners, I should say. In other words, the west border and the north border. I don't think a fence is too much to ask, and it's going to be to everyone's benefit.
Gary, I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. I know you're way over the 3 minutes, and I appreciate everything that you're saying. I know that's a lot of that you've stated in that letter that I know I've read.
Yeah.
I'm sure the commissioners have. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time, so.
Understood. Did anybody have any questions on this sheet?
I didn't.
So, now in those prices, there was no costs figured in if they decided to tie it into their outfall structure. And there was no end sections figured into that price. That's just the pipe and the gravel for installation. And like I said, I'll install it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's our next?
Karen Harris?
Karen, come on up, please.
I'll take less than 3. So we took over 3.
Sharing time, huh?
That's right, we're sharing time.
So I'm just gonna, I brought a little visual.
Karen, for the record, could you state your name?
Sorry, Karen Harris, 1801 South Princeton
Thank you.
Street, Ottawa, Kansas. And I'm a visual person, so this helps me. Basically, I put a PC on Price Chopper so that you can see the proximity of where Price Chopper is to my house. So when it comes to, when Price Chopper was built, Gary talked about the amount of trash that we had in our yard. Seeing this map really kind of was a visual for me, and I thought that's why I brought it to share. Because this right here is how close we are for this project versus a block away. So Price Chopper is at 19th and Princeton. I live at 1801 South Princeton. So it's exactly one block up. This is against my property, which is why we're concerned about the trash when you look at how far from here to there versus here to here. So, and I will, the visual was what I wanted to share, so. That's there, we got 6 minutes to us.
All right, thank you, Karen.
Thanks.
Who's our last public comment?
Philip Martin.
Philip, come on up, please. Please state your name for the record.
Philip Martin, 1905 South Princeton. Our property will be just to the south of the 19th Street proposed area. And we've had concerns over the traffic, over the privacy issue as well as trash issue. Water flow is also something that we might be concerned with. Currently, most of the rainwater that hits our lot, which is just shy of an acre, basically stays on our lot. The developer came out today. We walked down some of the areas. Something we talked with our neighbors to the north. I believe the current plan is for a sidewalk to be on their side. So I don't know, this was discussed in the planning portion. But I believe that sidewalk will be too close to their garage for city code. And whether or not the sidewalk could be placed on the south side, it would make sense for pedestrians, for the safety of our neighbors exiting their garage. We discussed that with the developer as well. It doesn't make sense to have pedestrians walking on the north side of 19th Street and then crossing over 19th just to cross over to get to Price Chopper. It would make more sense to have them traversing one side. Obviously, fencing was something we had hoped for the developer to install for privacy and trash. They stated they did not budget for that. That makes sense. But pretty much all of the properties affected by this development have trees. And this is something we've discussed that if at all possible, we'd like to see the tree lines remain as they are. If trees need to be removed for dirt work, then replace them with like or better trees. Simply for privacy and trash. Obviously, we live, right across the street from Price Chopper, so we do see quite a bit of trash. But also from Walmart. It's a windy area. That end of Ottawa is a higher elevation than where we're at right now. And that was something that I was not really thinking of when we purchased that property, but there is quite a bit of wind and trash that comes along the way. So what I have.
Mr. Martin, if I may, was it your wife that came and visited us on June 26th?
Yes.
And I believe you guys were supposed to have a conversation with the developers after that, or she was after that.
Yes.
Were you privy to any of that information or that conversation? How do you feel that conversation went?
Doing well.
Okay. So you feel like there's some that they're trying to work with you, do a little bit to take care of some of the needs that you have, concerns that you have?
We've emailed back and forth proposals on an easement agreement. It's my understanding the city might want the easement agreements actually in the plans for all of you to see. And And if that's what needs to be, that's fine too. But yes, they are working with us on our driveway. And they actually looked at trees that might need to be removed from our property for the driveway to go in.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank
Can you tell me before you go, when you were talking about a fence, were you talking about a permanent fence or a fence that will be put up just during construction and then removed? A
So,
temporary fence?
I'd like to see both.
Mhm.
Obviously, if they can leave the trees, then, you know, potentially there's no need for any fence at all. But it was never really clarified in any of our previous discussions, I don't believe, of whether it was just going to be construction or permanent. So.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. We have no other public comments, right? Okay. Commissioners, after hearing the three public comments, do you have any other questions for either Director Landis or Mr. Hamby while he's here?
Molly, we have in code to plant trees for residential property, correct? That's my understanding. Per house that's built, you have to plant trees, correct?
I don't believe that there's landscaping plans.
Okay, I was trying to find, okay.
But I can bring back the detail
Okay.
for you.
I assume that's in the standard residential. Okay.
Any other questions?
I guess I've got one for the developer. Do I be got that far yet, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Please.
On the Martin's concern about the trees on the east side of their house, is there a way to leave those or at least leave one row of trees as a natural barrier between their house and the playground?
You want me to come up
Please,
there?
please come on. Let us all know who you are too, please.
Hey, I'm Derek Hamilton. I'm one of the principals of Belmont
Nice to meet you.
Development. So yeah, that was the purpose of our on-site meeting today, was to just kind of get firsthand eyes on it to see where that tree line is compared to the property line. Looks like it's maybe 5 or 6 feet beyond their property line. So what I left with Mr. and Mrs. Martin today was look at the survey. I think we do have some trees next to the playground already on our site plan, but I don't have it with me right now, but to see if we can keep any or all of that tree line there. I mean, it's a nice natural barrier. Obviously less expensive than fencing for sure.
That's what I'm bringing up.
After this meeting, I plan to get with our civil engineer and go over that very point, and even tree lines to the north as well, to see if that's possible as well. We also met with the Sparks on the north side of 19th, and their concern was a little bit different. They were kind of wanting some trees to be taken out. I don't think, they said they weren't gonna be able to make it tonight, but they have a big tree right next to their house that might be in the utility line. That's caused some damage to their house in the past from lightning and stuff. So their concern was almost kind of the opposite. But they would like to see as many trees, other than those two up front, remain as well. So,
And then this isn't your first development, is it?
no.
I guess you've done these before. What do you do on trash mitigation during construction? Do you have a plan or do you do anything?
Yeah, typically our superintendent has a laborer or assistant superintendent that's every day they go around and pick up trash at the end of the day. I mean, I'll be honest, it's construction. I mean, Mr. Harris is familiar with it. A lot of times the neighbor may have to call me or call our superintendent. Usually the superintendent is on a first name basis with all the neighbors. And those usually get addressed pretty quick. I do understand there's some trash that blows from Price Chopper. We saw a lot out at Martin's house today. They just cleaned up a few days ago and there's still some back there. I feel like that's more of an existing type thing and
Can't do much about
Yeah.
that, yeah, I agree with you on that. And then what about the fences along the west edge of these homes and the 7 or 8 homes along that west edge but to the people live on Princeton? Is that something that you would leave up to the owners of those homes to put that in, or is that something you do on normal developments?
it varies. Typically it's one of those things, and it probably doesn't sound great to say, but once you say I'll do it for one person, then it becomes a very expensive endeavor, because every single person north and south would like that. Definitely not opposed to other folks putting up fences. It may get built and we decide we need a fence as well, for security as well. So I wouldn't say that, it was definitely a non-negotiable thing. It was just we'd like to like to not commit to doing that just because it can turn into a very expensive endeavor.
Okay, good.
Well, and the construction of a fence can look a whole lot different to a bunch of different people.
Right,
I mean, the
Right.
aesthetics of a fence can look different depending on what kind of fencing you're looking at.
right. I mean, there will be construction fencing obviously during construction as well. But that'll go away once the houses are done.
Well, then I believe there was a possible commitment to the planning commission that if it was in the budget, maybe a fence could go up.
Sure, yeah, we did say that, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest and say our initial pricing has come back quite a bit higher than what we even anticipated, especially the utility and the dirt work. So, fences aren't expensive, assuming you're not doing, a half a mile. So.
Following on Mr. Martin's comment about the sidewalk, was there any thought to keeping it on the south side of 19th Street where it would match the existing sidewalk? Cause just kind of looking at the plan, how it kind of jumps across. And then there is one existing once you get into.
Right, yeah, I don't remember the reasoning versus having on the north or south side. Was that just the plan that we presented or?
Well, there's no right of way on the.
Yeah, it's the
south
right
side.
of way issue, Derek.
Yeah, when that road was realigned to line it with 19th Street, that road is basically right on the edge of the right of way.
Okay,
So the property owner would need to dedicate additional easement to make that happen.
Okay, I do.
So we have a minimal easement on that north side now, correct? Because the width of the road. So in that sidewalk will interfere with that easement a little bit, I believe.
The sidewalk is located right up in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Pretty congested.
and that's probably why it juts back once it gets to your parcel. Looking at the plan, it goes from right along the curb, it looks like, and it juts
Yeah,
back.
it's
That's the easement's a little bit, okay.
Yeah, I think the idea was to try to get the street as far south as possible to line up
Yeah.
across the lines.
Commissioners, any other questions for Derek?
Have you dealt with other issues with regard to the drainage of a detention pond like this? And tell me about your experience with that.
As far as,
Experience with the detention pond discharge and the concerns that you heard today about overflow and flooding downstream.
honestly, this is the first really objection we've had on any project with stormwater. Like I think I've said in the past, I'm not an engineer. So we hired an engineering firm. It was reviewed. I mean, to my knowledge and from what I've heard, we're reducing it actually a little bit, not increasing it. But as far as anything beyond that,
That's all right.
so.
Curious, thanks.
Commissioners, any other questions for Derek? Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And just for general purpose notes or information, that's ordinance 1.1.
No, it's our development
Development
policy,
agreement?
section 1.13 for area cleanliness requires that if the site's not maintained in a cleanly fashion, the city may require the construction activity cease until satisfactory cleanup is accomplished. So we have kind of a broad brush capacity.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, commissioners, on this item? We will have it again next Monday. If anything else comes up, and certainly, as we always do, if you have any other questions, please direct them in via email to whoever you feel needs to read it. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, item B, budget overview. First one is the assessed valuation with Director Landis.
You. So to kick off our budget conversation tonight, we do have some of our community partners that are here to talk with you about their portion of the budget request. But first, I thought it was worth having a conversation about assessed valuation first and how that came in, because that kind of dictates where we go with a lot of our budget conversations. And so I do have presentation up for you, and this was also included in your packet. So as opposed to writing a memo first to explain how we came up with this, we wanted to have the conversation with you first to make sure that there wasn't any change in the direction that we wanted to go before we put together a final budget recommendation letter for you or memo for you. So can you advance 2 slides, please? All right, so this chart here is a look at where we've come from 2015 as far as an assessed valuation. And just for a reminder for you and for our public that might be listening or anyone in the room. So our assessed valuation is the total value of those, the assessed value of those properties. And it's not the appraised value of those properties. It is the way that it impacts us in the budget and the way that we are managing the budget is that we have a portion of that assessed valuation that comes in. So for every mill levy, you have an amount that it's assigned based on your value. So 1 mill would be equivalent to $134,000 roughly in this current year. And so you can back into that. So in 2015, 1 mill was worth $80,000 and now today it's worth $134,000. So that if that gives you any indication of how the value of 1 mill has grown over time, though that's the part of this process that we don't control necessarily. The part that you are making decisions on is how we use those dollars that are available to us and the number of mills that we assign to our budget or the amount of property tax dollars that we need in order to accomplish your budget. And that's how you come up with a mill. So there's a whole calculation behind it. We'll get into that at our next discussion, but I wanted to make sure that you could kind of see what the history is here. I think at our last conversation, Commissioner Skidmore had the question, or maybe it was you, I'm sorry, one of you were asking, is this typical? Is our typical increase in assessed valuation always around 10%? Last year it was 10.6%. This year it's 9.96%. But no, if you look back in the past and not very many years ago, it was only 1.5 to 2.5%. We did jump to 5, 6. And so it does tend to fluctuate over time. And the importance of that is that your operating budgets are dependent upon those dollars. And so should we assign too many dollars or too many operations tied to those dollars, then that's what impacts your mill levy and forces it to increase or decrease over time, or to make decisions on how you manage your operations or your services to your community. So with all of that said, we have 3 of our partners here that want to talk to you about their budgets or their recommendations or requests of you. And the first will be our library. The second will be the Franklin County talking about 911, and the third will be FCDC. And all of the information was in the packet. What they've submitted for you to review was in the packet. So you have that with you. And then also there is a slide with the history or the information for each one. So I might kick off the library discussion just real quick to show that on this slide at the very bottom, the detail at the top was in your packet. The detail at the bottom is what the state budget form looks like as far as an estimated mill levy would be based on the numbers that have been put together and submitted so far. And I'll let Terry talk more about that. And then as we move into the next 2, there's a slide just to kind of show the history of funding for each of the next 2 activities. So if you have questions of me, I'm happy to answer, but I think it's appropriate to bring them up and let them have a discussion with you about their request.
I was gonna give you gentlemen the opportunity to leave. I didn't think you want to stay. I mean, you can if you'd like. Bring it on. Terry, come on up, please. Good afternoon. What do you got for us?
So you guys have received the memo that was sent to City Manager Brian Sofat and all of you. And it kind of goes over what our budget priorities and what our needs are. This is our 151st year of being a community partner with the City of Ottawa. So we do appreciate that. We also look at other ways to fund the library. We have many community partners that we partner with to bring programs every year. We also seek and apply for available grants. We accept donations and we utilize volunteers at the library. And we do have requirements that we have to meet. We have several requirements that we have to look at as we set our budget. One of those is a 2-state test requirement where we have to ask for either equal or extra money each year, either in the form of the mill levy or the dollar amount that we request. And we also have many requirements from Nichols each year that we're required to meet. And we are a major service center to library, which is very important to us. There are only 3 other libraries in Nichols that are above us in that requirement. So we are very excited to be able to say that we're a major service center to library. We do have to meet a minimum of 65% of our employees' wages and benefits, 12% of expenditures on materials for the library and for our patrons. And then we have to employ 2 full-time MLS degree individuals and 1 full-time technical staff support person. The importance of that technical staff support person has been that not only do they make sure the library runs appropriately, they also train staff and they provide services to our patrons that come in and have questions. So that's a great person to have on staff. And we are limited to 10 mills. That was from a charter ordinance in September of 1995. So we have been meeting that 10 mil limit for a number of years. We meet with the finance director annually to discuss our budget. And we do estimate a uncollected tax amount of 2.3%. So we are totally committed to having an excellent staff here. Libraries are libraries, and what makes them great is their staff. We have increased our youth librarians so that we now have 3 full-time. We had decreased that to about 2.5, so we're excited to bring that back to 3 full-time. And what we did is added a teen librarian who has increased our teen programming, and she's really hit the ground running, getting ready to promote our teen council and get them back involved in the library. That kind of went away during COVID, so we're excited about that. We do have 1 volunteer that works a desk position, and she has worked that position for probably 3 or 4 years now. Never know when she's going to be retiring. She is a retired school librarian, so this is her retirement to help her stay valuable in the community and make her feel like she's useful still, she tells us. I am responsible not only for my position, but I also do the business manager position. We always consider changing our hours and increasing our hours on Saturday and Sunday. This budget does not reflect that. We have our O-Town Reads program. So this budget does reflect some funding for that. Some of our larger donors have moved on to the new building project and the Franklin County Literature Festival project. Our beginning balance each year has to cover our January payrolls and our January bills. Our restricted funds that are in our budget that you guys see each month are not included in this presentation because they are restricted. Cost of QuickBooks has gone up this year, and we've had an increase in overhead cost, and motor vehicle tax has decreased, and of course ad valorem has increased. And we do have capital improvement fund, we have an endowment fund, and we have the Friends of the Ottawa Library that support us. The endowment fund is funded fully by donations. And we appreciate all the individuals that have helped us with donations and fundraising. Our Friends of the Ottawa Library completely support our summer reading program for children, teens, and adults. So that's a great thing that they support. Do you want to mention that they started being the sponsor of the Franklin County Children's Literature Festival in November of 2017. So they, along with our staff and some members of USD 290 are organizing and planning and fundraising for that event each year. And we have a bookstore for those that don't know that. And the Friends of the Ottawa Library have a bookstore at 209 East 2nd Street. And it is open Mondays, 1 to 2:30, and the first and third Saturday of each month. Previously, we had our annual Skunk Run book sale that some people here I'm sure remember, but now we no longer do that since we have our own bookstore. And I always present to you also the card holder pie chart. That is requested by you guys each year, so you have that as well. Do you have any questions?
The house on West 15th, is that property include the house there too?
So the property that we own includes the 2 houses and the big shed, and then there's a little garage too.
Are you getting rent on that right now? or-
We are, we have 3 of the buildings, the 2 houses and the big building are all leased
So it
out.
Offsets, I guess, the taxes on the property and.
Yes, yeah, and we pay taxes on the property still, yes.
About that.
So was that listed somewhere in other revenue?
So it is listed in our capital improvement fund. It's part of our capital improvement fund. That money does go into it. And you will see that on the monthly report. We put those deposits in there. We pay taxes out of that, out of the capital improvement fund.
On the motor vehicle tax, has the percentage gone down, or is it the amount collected that gets shared to you guys, or how does that? Because I saw it was 106 and 22, it's down 20,000 in 2 years.
So that is a number that we get from the county and we just plug it in.
Okay.
Commissioner, do you have any other questions for Terry on the library fund?
Tell me about the restricted funds that you were talking about. Are those tax funds that you'd receive tax money?
No, those are funds that individuals have donated to us, either, when family pass
Yeah.
away or individuals that have retired
Memorial.
that come in and write a check to us, and they've restricted those funds to a certain item that they want them to go to. Whether that is children's department or teens or food for the homeless, and that's what we have to spend those funds on.
So Friends of the Library donations are, where are they reflected in your budget?
So you will not see them in our budget because they have their own budget.
But you receive the donations and so they should be budgeted somewhere, correct?
Right, but they fund our summer reading. So we may pay the bills, but then they reimburse us. So it's a wash. It's an in and out thing. It's about $10,000 every year, though. If they support the library budget and the Lit Fest, and with our budget is about 10,000.
I'm assuming there's some information that they have, a budget that they have. Is that information that we could get?
Sure, yeah, and we are audited every year, and that audit includes the Friends bookkeeping and the endowment bookkeeping. That's all part of our audit.
So then the budget that you presented here is not actually a true budget on what, yeah, I mean, what it says it's an actual budget, it's not what's come in and out, because I mean, Friends of the Library donation isn't in there, what you do in and out, it's a wash, it's not in any of this.
Well, it's a budget that represents the library and expenses that, and income that come in and out of the library. The Friends have their own checking account. So all of their money goes through their checking account.
Right, but they still are making a donation to you and you account for that somewhere within your budget.
Well, their donation to us really doesn't come to us. It comes directly out of their checking account. I mean, it's all their funds. So like if we go out and spend money on prizes for summer reading, the library may initially pay that check to get it to the people that need it, but the Friends reimburses us for that payment. So it's a wash account that we have. It's called, and it's a special purchase account that goes in and out.
Are there other such donations that you have accounts like that?
Not really. Capital improvement, that might happen a little bit if for some reason somebody makes a donation through a credit card. That goes into our checking account and we'll write a check out. And I'll code that to the 130 number that we use, and just to remind me that that needs to be cleared out.
And you probably have expenses, I mean, from your rental houses, I mean, the house
Yeah,
doesn't
and
just
that's-
exist
that's all.
itself.
Right, and that's all capital improvement. Yeah, from time to time, we'll have plumbing issues that we have to pay for and, yeah. Water lines,
The joy of homeownership.
yes, yeah, but none of that affects the mill levy that we're asking for. Yeah, it's all separate and it doesn't affect what we're asking the city to fund.
And is this, I was kind of trying to tell how it was broke up. Is this you guys that qualify for the state grant for 2024?
Right.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was the bottom of your page or the top of 911,
Yeah,
so,
that is us.
okay.
Yeah, and in qualifying for the state grant, we also qualify for the Nichols money, which is reflected in this budget, which is 44,000.
Commissioners, any other questions for Terry?
In the last 2 years, you've had a salary increase of approximately 13% for staff salaries, but I wasn't aware that that probably has to half of that, or not half of it, but a half of position has been then counted in that, correct?
Yeah, last year we also had someone surprise us and retire. So she had retirement benefits that we had to pay out. With her retirement, she was the head of our circulation department and she worked 28 hours a week. And when I rehired that position, the person that had that position before worked 40 hours a week, which makes life much easier, not only on me, but the rest of the staff to have that head of the department work 40 hours. So when we rehired that position, we moved it up to 40 hours.
It's really like 3/4 of a person
Yeah.
you hired. Okay, that makes more sense.
Commissioners, any other questions for Terry? I believe so. Terry, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for Director Landis on this budget? Let's move on to 911 funding. You gonna come up first, Director Landis, or Janet, do you want to come on up?
The only thing I would have to add here is that the library fund, as you know, is funded, it's a separate fund reflected in our state budget or in our overall budgeted funds, and the 911 funding is included in our general fund. And it's an expense that comes directly out of our non-operating budget in our general fund. So really, that's all I have to add to this, and this is Janet's presentation.
Thank you. Welcome, Janet.
Sarah Peppley, in case you guys know.
Hello.
I assume you guys all got the letter that I sent out to you guys. The first thing in the letter, I'm happy to say that we recently refunded you guys $34,719 off the budget last year, which from our audit, that was 50%, which is what we agreed on last year as part of this process. So I'm happy to do that. You can take a look at our budget there, and really overall, the only changes are in our personnel. And if you'll recall, we were seeing some savings from having someone share some duties. We had Nick Robbins, the EMS chief that we had for a significant amount of time, took over the duties when the sheriff's office stopped having someone in there in the dispatch center. And so Nick was doing that as additional duties. So only a small portion of his salary came from the dispatch budget. So it was saving us all a bit of money. But when Nick left us, that left us with no one else that could fill that position. And so Sarah was promoted to director, but that did leave a vacancy in the manager position, which is someone who kind of helps oversee day-to-day operations. So we did have to add that position back into the budget. And so that is reflected in this healthcare cost. I know you guys know this as well as anybody, but that's something we absolutely have no control over, and they give us the number and we have to plug that into the budget. But one other thing to note is that we do have a lot of younger individuals working that now in the dispatch center that have young families, and so they are taking a family plan of insurance, which does result in a higher cost, as you know, over time, that'll kind of transition out, but right now that's where we're at. So, those are the only additional costs that we have this year.
Commissioners, any questions for Deanna?
Sarah, are we seeing increased number in calls still? It seems like each year we have more and more calls. Are you seeing increases or what's that going like?
We're increasing anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 calls roughly a year between all the people that I dispatch for.
And I just did the quick math that it's $66.88 an hour is our 585,000. So it's a huge number. It's kind of, you know, always looking at it, it's a little scary, but I remind myself when I call 911, I want someone to answer. And when you divide that by hour for the service they provide across an entire year, I think kind of shed some new light. Like there's some sticker shock, but I think when you look at it, $66 an hour for an entire year, that's, you know, 24/7 service that people are able to answer the phone when you call about fireworks.
And I think it's, and I do think it's really good that we decided last year to you know, share in the extra that results from the dispatch center being very frugal, and Sarah is definitely that. She shared with our commissioners during her budget meaning that when she's short staffed, she doesn't immediately jump to looking to pay her people overtime to come in and cover that. She shared that she was down there on the floor working, and so, you know, that's she's covering some of those hours, so that does help out the budget too.
We know you miss it.
She definitely misses working nights.
Janet, tell me a little bit about Wellsville contribution. I know that's changed recently, right?
Yes.
Because of the new building?
Yep, so we did enter into a contract with Wellsville, and we reviewed Wellsville's numbers that they were the calls that area was generating, and we based their contribution on their percent, much like the city of Ottawa is based on their percent of call volume.
And what, do you know what that number is, their contribution
Right around 10 to 13%. Somewhere
of
in
the
there.
total budget?
Oh, no. Yeah, so their first year, they'll be at 50,000, like we're just building them in, you know, because they weren't expecting that to be part of it, so we're building them up to that. So their first year will be 50,000, and then after that, it will be based on a percentage.
When's their first year?
Next
Is that
year.
next year? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
I really appreciate the memo. Thank you, Janet, for putting together the memo. I think it was well written and it really explained everything to a T. Now, can you remind citizens who may be listening that the pay structure, the wage increases, was that last year or 2 years ago that you guys made wage increases?
So
based on
we
which
have,
study?
last year we did. Well, it was part of the budget process last year, and they actually took effect in January of this year. So, but we do have a pay plan for the county, and that is something that we're very passionate about, taking care of our employees, because as we take care of those employees, they stay longer and we build more knowledge and have, you know, better outcomes in every department as we have long-term employees. So built into this budget is our 2.5% merit raise for a successful evaluation, and a 1.6% COLA raise, which is much lower than many governmental entities are putting into their budget. A lot of counties have indicated to me that they're putting somewhere upwards of 4 or 5% in their budget for their COLA adjustment that they're planning. And we only do it from July on. So this budget only reflects a half a year of that COLA. So whereas a lot of them implement it in January. So, and we do that in July to make sure that everybody's budget numbers are kind of coming in where they're planned to come in. And again, you guys share in any resulting savings. So if we decide not to do the COLA, then that's a savings in the budget, and you guys would ultimately benefit in that too.
Are there other cities besides Wellsville being considered, or is that just, they're not large enough to?
Wellsville's really the only one that has their own police department. Mhm. So, and they kind of have a dedicated fire out there that's in the city of Wellsville, but it is a fire district, so it covers Franklin Township, but yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about, I know that several years ago, we went into like a memorandum of understanding and there was gonna be a committee put together and they were going to meet. How, is that still happening? Or maybe our chief of police can answer? Is that
Yes.
still
We
an
meet
ongoing?
monthly.
Okay, great. And tell me about that and for maybe the public that doesn't know about what that does, what you're doing.
So we have an advisory board for the dispatch center. And it has representatives of all three law enforcement, City of Ottawa Fire Department, EMS, Emergency Management, and then a representative for all 8 rural fire departments. And then we discuss anything from medical calls, fire calls, to how we're going to be dispatching calls, any of that stuff.
And that really just keeps the line of communication open, so there's no, and you're saying every month you're meeting, or every quarter?
We generally meet every month, but there's sometimes if there's not any topics, then
Yeah, you don't,
it gets postponed.
sure.
It does help update policies. and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, this is quite a shocking adjustment for us, and so at the same time, I understand we've just, I guess I explained it, we've had a really exceptionally good deal in the past, and now we're just meeting the true reality of what we have right now,
Yeah.
so, okay.
I mean, we are looking for those savings when we can benefit from someone filling 2 positions and we only take a little bit additional onto the budget. We are always looking for those places and looking for, just ways that we can save, but unfortunately, this is one of those places that we got the other side of the coin, so.
I would hope that as a part of this budget, that we continue to have an understanding that if there is funding that is not spent or funding that is part of the audit that is kind of overages, that we will indeed share that.
Yes, we intend to continue that with you guys, so that we, obviously you guys are paying 50%, so you should get 50% back if it's not spent.
We appreciate the check. Clear?
You're only gonna sign it over and hand it back, but.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
That's good.
Commissioners, any other questions?
What about- I know that in previous years, we've talked about job retention and about how you were able to keep employees or not keep employees. Tell me about what the employee, what's your employee base look like?
So currently, we're 1 member short. We're a 10 staff department on the floor. There's 12 of us total, currently operating at 11. My newest employee has been there just over a year. And for the ones working on the floor, 8 years.
8 years is the average,
5 to 8 years.
right? And with those years comes actually really great knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Right. I would like to, in the future, kind of see some call data. Right, just, and it doesn't have to be during budget time. You can just do it. A couple times a year. And I think that was part of the memorandum, but I could be wrong. Have to look back, sorry.
Any other questions for on 911 funding? Great. Thank you.
So historically, what happened with the 911 phone tax? Because that's almost 600,000 a year. And it's zeroed out this year. They've got 2 directors and a manager. How's that structured for the employee workflow?
It's a bigger conversation maybe than we should have at 5 at night.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could get an email and pass that around, I'm sure we could get some of those answers. But
Yes.
Okay.
it might be some good questions that are. Thank you. We'll get them.
Yep.
All right, that'll move us on to Franklin County Development Council.
So as a base for this conversation, the FCDC budget or the appropriation is part of our community service budget, which is a separate fund. And we do fund that from each of the utilities plus the general fund. So it's a portion, a percentage portion is sent to that fund via transfer each year. So that's really just the basis of how each of these are funded. You heard from all of our other community partners at a previous meeting. Mr. Bean wasn't available at that meeting, so we wanted to invite him back. And his information, he does actually have a separate PowerPoint for you. This is just a quick history of the appropriations and the distributions for FCDC over time, and I'll turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Millie.
Welcome, Mr. Bean.
Thank you, thank you. That same thing is in the packet I just gave you, and on the very top, so I thought, I agreed with Melanie, that's a pretty good piece of information to have. I've got a little PowerPoint I'll walk through and share a few other things, but before I even get started, I just want to say thanks to the city for the tremendous support you've given the FCDC as that shows, or it did. Very much appreciated and appreciate the investment in the economic development of the community. So thank you for that. Certainly don't take that for granted. Just to give you a little bit of background, as you may recall, I came on board in November of 2019, just in time for COVID. So that was pretty cool. You can go ahead and flip it if you would, Paul. So this kind of gives you a bar graph of our total revenue as an organization, this counting all the contributions from the city, the county, and all the members and grants that we've received. You'll see a big bump in 2020, and basically that was because of two things. One, we got an I went out and got $82,000 grant for pandemic relief. Happy to get that. Hope I never have to get it again. And then I also got a $20,000 grant from Evergy, because as you'll see and probably recall, we emphasized kind of updating our marketing. We didn't have any marketing materials. Our webpage was about 5 years old. We were really not doing anything in that world. So overall, it's been kind of an up and down, but like I said, the big anomaly was the grants that we received in 2020 for basically COVID. Break that out and pull out what we're doing on the next slide is the revenue that's coming in from the private sector or members. That's a really good story. We've had a 42% increase since 2019. 2019 was $35,550 in membership dues from the private sector. And in 2022, we reached 50,600. And year to date, we're at 51,425 for fiscal year 2023. So we continue to grow our membership and grow that piece. I feel like that's an important component. So we're not just using tax dollars to fund this organization, but we're seeking support from the members within the organization. And this includes,
Sorry, how many members?
we are at 90 today.
Thank you.
We were at 62 in 2019.
Thank
you. Members can be anybody. It can be an individual, can be a business, small business, can be a large business. We have some members that are in Lawrence and Topeka and even up in the city. So we've expanded our network quite a bit. So that's been a positive for us. The expenses, again, you'll see a big anomaly in 2020. And again, we used a lot of that money, as I mentioned, when I came in board at the end of 2019. We really didn't have any marketing materials. We had an outdated website. We had no materials for me to promote Proximity Park. One of the things in your packet at the back is the brochure that we created for Proximity Park that we use pretty extensively, the printed copy and also the online version of that. The low number there in 2019 is the year that FCDC did not have an executive director. So that's why you see a very low expense line in that year. There wasn't much activity, just to be honest. In 2019, as the organization was kind of going through a transition. We continued every year to try to be very frugal and very good with the funds. But every now and then, as you'll see here in a minute, there's things that come up that FCDC goes ahead and uses funds for that maybe aren't in the regular budget. So you'll see some things there, and that's really reflected in the next slide, which is the net gain and loss through the years. You can see in 2019, the expenses were really low, and so we had quite a surplus. And so all of that went back into the reserve. And then there in 2020 is when we received a lot of revenue, but we also spent a tremendous amount of money fixing our marketing, getting a website, working on some other tools that help us promote the park in the community as well. Continue to do a little bit of that. For example, in 2021, we purchased a housing study that's benefited the city here and Wellsville in particular, but Franklin County wide. Those are $9,000 items. So when you don't have things like that budgeted, that kind of has an impact, obviously. But I think it's something that we've benefited from. We've been using that old study for the MIH applications and some other programs that you all have been participating in. So it was a good investment. We also did a labor shed study in 2021 and updated that because that was outdated. Some of that was paid in 2020, some of it was paid in 2021, a little bit of an overlap. And then last year, we were able to run a surplus of almost a little over $16,000. Again, goes back into our CDs, basically, is where the reserve sits. Some of that sits in a checking account. When I came on board, we had a couple of CDs and most of it in a non-interest bearing checking account. So we fixed all that. CDs around COVID time on average were about 1.9%. And today we've got the average return on those a little over 4%, 4.2. So we're taking advantage of the increase in rates. I had one that just renewed that was on a 5-year term at a very low rate. So I'm excited to renew that one at a much more attractive rate. So we're using those funds much more diligently and being better stewards of our resources for sure. So we're earning interest on those reserves as well. And then activity on Proximity Park, you know, a lot of folks don't understand because there's nothing out there that there's nothing going on. But this chart kind of shows you, the blue lines show you the RFPs that come in. So the requests for proposals that come in, and then the orange are the ones I've responded to. And so just to give you an idea, in 2020, we had 20 RFPs. In 2021, we had 23. In 2022, we had 29. And year to date, we have 12. I responded in 2020 to 11 of them, 17 of them in 2021, 16 of them in 2022, and 5 so far in 2023. So normally about a 50% response. Why would we not respond to one? Well, it's a bad fit, or they need a rail, or they need more power or utility than we can provide, or a number of factors where, and normally what I do on these, unless it's just obvious, I'll reach out to the city manager and the county administrator and say, okay, I'm kind of on the fence on this. Should I respond? What do you think? So I'm not just solely being the gatekeeper on it. I kind of like to include our 2 biggest investors in that decision. But if it's obvious, like I said, if it's rail or Mr. Tharp is phenomenal to work with, if I send him utility needs, he does a great job of saying no or yes or maybe or so Dennis has been awesome to work with on that because those are the early information that you get that can either say you should continue looking at this or don't waste anybody's time and move on. So I get great support from the city on those decisions. But it's about a 50%
response rate on those. The other thing I wanted to share with the graphs is the e-community impact, and this is significant in the sense of what it's doing in our community. The e-community, if you recall, is entrepreneurship community. It's something I've worked on for about a year to get approved for membership from Network Kansas. And this gives us access to loans for startup businesses. Businesses are expanding. It gives us access to programs for entrepreneurship programs for kids and students and scholarships and cash rewards. And it gives us access to a number of training vehicles and opportunities for business to learn how to make their business. For example, we have programs to how do you make your business a destination business, or how do you do this? How do you do that? And we also have access then for free for any business where they can visit with somebody about a business plan and help me figure out what I'm doing wrong, or how can I maybe increase my margins, or what's just take a look and see what I could do better, kind of thing. The loan program has been pretty cool. The blue line on this is the bank loan. And so what we do is we partner with the local banks when we have a new business or a business that's wanting to expand. And we partner with them. And so say, for example, I want to start a business and I need $100,000 and the bank says we can do 60, then e-community can come behind and do the other 40. And so we do a second position behind the bank. So we're not competing with the bank. We're actually assisting the bank by giving them 40,000 equity security on their 60. And also then that business can happen where maybe it couldn't if it was just the bank itself. So we've gotten a total just this year in new businesses or expanded business, 4 of them. And the 4th one will close next Monday. Total investment in our community for new or expanding business is $420,400. The nice thing about this is, yes, e-community has loans, and we're providing $125,500 of that number in loans. But if they meet certain criteria, for example, if it's a downtown business or it's childcare, and there's another factor, and I'm drawing a blank, but we can potentially award a grant. And so 30,000 of this 420 has been grants. So some of these businesses got a pretty good chunk of money that they don't ever have to pay back. It's just a grant. And again, that's because we're e-community through Network Kansas. And so it's bringing in those revenue opportunities for our local community and our businesses. So this is kind of out of the main, when you think of FCDC industrial, this is kind of out of that lane, because this is really about retail and commercial, but that's something that I feel like we need to raise all boats. And so if we have a healthy downtown or healthy economic community, that helps us attract industry and vice versa. And so, and then if you know me, I'm pretty excited about the youth component and how we teach them about business and opportunity to grow and give them cash awards. But the e-community has had a significant economic impact in the city of Ottawa. Haven't done any of these anywhere else yet. I'm hoping to do some in Wellsville, but I've got 3 more prospects in the pipeline that are in Ottawa. So I anticipate that we'll have a bigger number to share with you by then.
And if I'm remembering correctly, not long after I arrived, one of my first copies was the next agenda item was a recipient for one of the e-community impact.
Yeah, we actually, you're talking about Riley Browning's business where they're in the old Maggie's. And so we were able to help Riley. And then he found a person wanting to start a new business that would lease the other side of that building. So we helped that happen, providing some grant and loan funds for that business as well. So both of those businesses in the old Maggie's building are there in large part because of e-community and the local banks. I don't want to underemphasize the banks are a real good partner on this, or it wouldn't happen at all. So
those subordinate loans you're talking about now, how is the loan decision made on those? I mean,
on this particular, I'm glad you asked that. On this particular program, our max loan is 45,000, and that's a local board decision. So basically, the e-community board reviews it,
Who all's on that board? Is it
That
community members?
is, let me go around the room here. Casey Lytle. Raymond Love. Roger Maxwell, Blake Jorgensen. Christina County. Forgetting a couple of people.
That's okay, I'm just doing
And then we have a regional rep with Network Kansas. And we just had a change, but Janet Miller is our new rep, and so we always have that person. We meet monthly as a board. And Janet, who's our regional rep for e-community, is at every one of those meetings. But whenever we have a loan, then that's the local board makes that decision. Now, we have a whole plethora of other loan programs that are larger. For example, we have a program for women and minority owners. And they can go above the 45,000 and actually do 200% of the bank loan. But that's underwritten by Network Kansas in Topeka. Now, I can go through training, and when I have time, I hope to, so we can pull that authority back local. But right now, that would go out of town. So there's a number of other loan programs. Actually, one of the apps that I'm looking at right now would probably stack this loan with a minority owner loan, and those would be back behind the bank also with a grant. So you can package it a number of ways. It's pretty cool.
I love the Network
Yeah.
Kansas story. I think it's important to probably highlight that one of the individuals at Network Kansas is really from Ottawa.
Yeah.
I mean, she calls Ottawa home, and that's, is Imogene still with?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so she's from rural Ottawa, and so that's kind of how that all came about. So it's been a good thing. Good job.
And then just to list a few other things, and then we'll touch on some other stuff, just to let you know things I'm doing. Obviously, I work closely with the city on the MIH ARPA applications, and you guys have done a really good job as a city in working in that program, and that's bringing homes to our community for workforce. I do a lot of work with business retention with our local industry and expansion with our existing industry. Keep pretty close tabs with a lot of our folks and checking to see what we need to do or what's happening or how can I help them find employees has been a big issue with most of our industry. Obviously a key player in the Franklin County Career Day, which is hosted every year at Ottawa High School, has become a good program. It was a good program, and we continue to tweak that. Statewide, I'm representing the community pretty much in a lot of places. I'm on the board of Kansas Works. John Cohen was the board member for that, and they just elected me to take his seat this last month. KEDA is a lead organization for economic development folks across the state of Kansas, and I'm on that board. And then Team Kansas is another group that is economic development folks that kind of come beside commerce and provide assistance in business recruitment and trying to get industry to come to the state of Kansas. So keep very much in tune and engaged with those organizations. Also working on site certification, that's with Proximity Park, where the state will have you go through a program, you get your property, your industrial park certified, it moves it to the top of the list. So when there's have an industry that's looking at coming to Kansas, the first place they go is to their list of certified sites and see if that's a fit for the industry that they're talking to. Started that about a year and a half, 2 years ago, myself, and quickly found out after getting the first section out of 5 done that I was never going to get it done in a year. I actually had some conversations with the Secretary of Commerce and some others about that program. And they understood it wasn't really being utilized and what were things they could do. And my comment was, a lot of the smaller offices that are one shop, we're never going to be able to do it. And we need some assistance. So they, not because of my conversation, but I think because of what they heard across the state, is they came up with a grant program where you could apply for a grant to hire somebody to help you with your site certification. soon as that came out, I submitted and we were the first community to get a grant under that program. So I'm working with Bartlett and West and we should have that completed in the next 60 days and then submit it to the state. So we'll have a certified site, which is a big step forward. Another thing I'm working on is a housing study. Like I said, we did one in 2021. Those are good for 2 years. When you look at the grant world and MIH, you have to have it within 2 years. And so I contracted with the same folks that did the last one, and we'll have a new housing study probably by the end of this month or 1st of August. When we did the first one, I was relatively new and just kind of ordered it and got it. And I'm gonna have a lot more say in what it's on the text message. The data could tell something, but the summary is pretty important and actually gonna work with the city manager and Melanie on that text, so we make sure it says what we want it to say in the manner that it should reflect what's happening. Some of that data is impacted by COVID. Some of it doesn't understand. There's a 4,000 employee plant coming to the north, another 2,000 plant to the south. And that doesn't show up in old data. So you've got to kind of tell your story a little better than maybe the guy sitting behind the computer can. So we're working on that. So once we have that, you'll get a new housing study. You've got an old one there in your packet. When I came on board, one of the things we expended a lot of that money in 2020 was a target analysis, and that's in your folder. Target analysis was done to kind of identify what kind of industry should we think about recruiting, what's a good fit for Proximity Park, what's a good fit for Ottawa. And the number 1 was food production, number 2 was advanced manufacturing, number 3 was logistics and distribution, and number 4 was consulting services. And if you don't want to read all of this, page 45 is still neat. But that's kind of been a driver of what kind of industry, when I get an RFP, does it fit into one of those categories? And how does that fit with the analysis that was done? And does that still feel like it's the right thing to do? We also, because of our connection with Network Kansas and E-Community, we got what's called a development opportunity profile. And I would encourage you, when you have some time, to look through that, and I'm happy to come back and maybe sometime do a more in-depth presentation on it. But this is kind of a neat analysis of our community. What are our opportunities? What are economic drivers as far as employers and employees? How important new resident attraction is to us. If you're shrinking, your economic outlook is going to get pretty bleak pretty fast. And so how do we continue what are the opportunities for us to develop and grow? So that's another tool that FCDC's kind of brought to the table. And then the other one I wanted to I gave you just a really short thing. It's called Size Up. This is another software package that FCDC is paying for in partnership with Miami County. But this is really cool. Again, what I gave you is just, it can quickly give you a snapshot of demographics. This is for demographics for the city of Ottawa. But you can go in the Size Up, and if you want to open a business, and you can put in your payroll and your cost, and it'll compare that to your industry averages. So are you thinking properly? You can look in there and find your competition. You can look in there and find your suppliers and where they are and who they are. You can look at there and find out where your target audience, where your market would be, and how you might want to market to them, where they live, what are their age range, all those types of things. So it's a really cool tool for a new business that's coming to town, but it's also a cool tool for an existing business. And again, it's another resource that right now FCDC is providing, again, trying to lift all boats. I don't know how long I'll continue to do some of these retail things. But I just felt like we needed a little attention in some of those areas, and FCDC was in a good position to do it. So that's why we're in that lane right now. And other than that, I've talked a lot, so I apologize, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have about FCDC.
Well, Paul, in spite of not having on a time spent in dealing with the development of proximity parking, certainly looked outside areas where we need to be working on looking at, and so I appreciate your effort in making that happen. I know that I'm sure you put in more than 40 hours a week as you are doing now, so keep up the good work. So I appreciate your information and those.
Appreciate it. I appreciate the city's support. You guys have been phenomenal supporters.
I will note that we're paying more than the county, though.
I know,
No, you're
Yeah.
paying the same as the county.
We're still a
Dollar.
more.
Dollar.
we're gonna have to.
Well, the county's donating office space,
You can,
staffing.
We've
Yeah,
got
yeah, come on
space.
down.
We're gonna,
I'll let you- I'll let
you and the county figure that out.
Save that dollar.
Just saying.
But no, seriously, I appreciate you guys have been great supporters of FCDC, not just in my tenure, but for years. I think it's incredibly important to this community. This is home. I want it to be successful, and I think you've got to grow. We've got to grow our tax base. The best way to grow is industry and business, because that's your better return on taxes. But you also have to have the housing for the workforce, so and then you want the quality of life, it's, like I said, it's raise all boats.
And like you said, something that jumped out to me as I looked at both of these. The decline, they're estimating a decline in population by 2027.
Yeah.
This one is as well, and yeah, that we've, I feel like Ottawa's grown since 2010, just living here, you feel like the population's changed, but looking statistically, yeah.
Well, like I said, that what's missing in that, and I think it'll start to reflect in a few years, but that's data from, data in 2023 doesn't show you the impact of the Panasonic plant.
Mhm.
And we all know it's there. We all know it's gonna have an impact. So,
I'm assuming based off census data,
yeah,
so.
So Paul, along the lines of growing, what is it the city can do better to help with development of our city?
I think it's just continue to look at what's the role the city can play to encourage any kind of development, industrial, housing. And there's limitations. We all know that. I'm a taxpayer. But I think it's continuously looking at what's the right fit. I think, I'm really looking forward, and I'd be happy to have a discussion with you when we get to the housing study, as what kind of housing and where. I'm talking to two different, and I know Melanie's had discussions with folks looking at building 55 and over residential. We need that. Those people, if you read in there, it talks about they spend money. They drive your economy in many ways where they didn't maybe in the past. But I think just continuing to have an open mind like you have, and say, well, and think about, is this a good fit? Is this the direction we want to go? And if so, then what's it going to take? And then it comes back to you all as well. That's what they say it's going to take. Is that what we want to do? And that's a fair conversation. And you all make that call, and that's the way it should be. The way we're organized. But your sport's been great. I can't thank you enough.
Commissioners, do we?
Well, $1. I'll buy each of you a cup of coffee. No, I can't do that. Let's do. Strike that from there.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions for Paul on the FCDC funding request? Paul, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And all the information that you gave us. I certainly appreciate it. All right, final budget review, our mill levy impact. Director Landis, welcome back.
All right, thank you. So I feel like I maybe missed one key point when I first opened our conversation to talk about assessed valuation. And when we talked at our last discussion, we talked about how we wanted to structure this budget and what that assessed valuation looked like as an impact to your property taxpayers in the community. And we talked about maybe having three options, one of them being that we would make sure that we were meeting the revenue neutral rate, which means that you're not taking advantage of any growth in your community, going ahead and using the full assessed valuation as it came in, which we talked about is the 9.96% increase, or trying to find some sort of middle ground. And so what you've heard so far in all of our conversations is that there's 4 mill levy impacted funds, right? Our auditorium, which you've heard about the auditorium operations, our debt service fund, you've seen that already. We had a conversation about the library this evening. And the final fund that we haven't talked about really in depth is the general fund. And so when we did structure the draft budget that we put together in our general fund, we really had some goals, and the goals that we set out to meet when we were putting together the draft initially was to obviously first and foremost maintain our current city services, the way that our public expects those services to come to them. And then we do always work towards bringing over and carrying over each year a minimum beginning fund balance of $2 million. From time to time, it's just shy less, it might be a little bit over, but we want to target that every year to ensure that we have enough dollars rolling over to be able to fund your capital and your city services. We also have not traditionally in the past budgeted for a reserve that we guarantee that rollover every year. And so we did want to work that into the budget as well this year, as opposed to just rolling the dice and hoping that we rolled over that 2 million every year. And then in addition to, we talked about specifically funding the compensation study results, and the number that we've used for that is 500,000. We don't know what that number is going to be. Reminding everyone that that number, $500,000, sounds like a lot of money, but you have to back off the top immediately. You have to back off your payroll taxes, your impact from CAPERS and KPNF, all of those things before you can actually get to the impact for each one of your employees. And then the goal of reducing that impact of the valuation increase on our property taxpayers. So our property owners and the value or the impact to them was where we settled in our last discussion. So we prepared the budget in that manner. What we've been able to accomplish in our 24 budget for the general fund are all of those things that I just mentioned, in addition to being able to maintain our current employee health insurance benefit structure, which increased by just less than 15%. Being able to increase our annual support for the airport, because if you'll recall in our capital improvements process, we talked about the 2 big grant opportunities for airport improvements, and that each one of those there's a match for us, and that match would be coming from your airport fund. Your airport fund is largely funded by your transfer from your general fund to support it. So in order to do that, we would have typically transferred about $56,000 per year. Now we're increasing that to about $85,000 per year, to be able to take advantage of those millions of dollars worth of improvement dollars from FAA and KDOT for the improvements of the airport. And then also to continue our 50% participation in the 911 emergency communications budget. So we put the general fund budget together with those things in mind. I did not give you this evening all of the detail, because I wanted to make sure that we were having a conversation about these numbers first, to make sure that you were in line, or we were all thinking the same thing when it comes to where we would land on the overall mill levy and that impact to our property owners. So next slide, please. So this is your mill rate history here. And what we have come up with, and you can see, I'm sorry, I guess first and foremost, what is most important stands out to me is that you can see that mill rate is declining. That does not mean that your property tax dollars for your individuals have declined, or that it for them. However, you can see that we are lessening the impact on them year over year, and that in our proposed budget, we are doing the same. And our goal was to meet somewhere in the middle, not necessarily take advantage of the full valuation increase, but to be able to use the dollars that came in from new improvements, any change in use, and be able to accomplish what we already had going as far as services. So the 24 budget, this is the mill rate trend overall, would be a decrease of about 1.75 mils overall. Next slide, please. And this is the breakdown. I want to explain this slide a little bit. To the left, your 2 left sets of columns are your history. So the last 2 years, the one that's highlighted in yellow is the proposed year for 2024. Which these are the numbers that are going to impact your tax statements that come out in November of this year. And the very right column is the revenue neutral rate. And I know we haven't talked a lot about revenue neutral rate and the calculation that supports those numbers, but these are rates that are given to us by the county, but the calculation is such that it is last year's property tax dollars placed against this year's valuation. So if you were to use the valuation for this year and only use the total tax dollars for last year, this is what your mill rate would be for each one of those funds. So it is always intended, it will always be less likely than what we're able to do, because unless you significantly dip into your operational budget and have no increases or aren't able to take advantage of any of the new improvements that have come on. So new improvements for this year were just over $2.8 million, and that is the change in use plus your new improvement dollars. So in order to calculate the general fund, we've only used 124 million as your assessed valuation. To calculate all three other funds, the library, the auditorium, and the debt service fund, we use 134 million. And so what that means is you have about a $10,000 difference per mill for your general fund than you do the other three funds. The importance of the debt service fund and the auditorium fund is that they're run fairly slim on dollars overall. There's not a lot of reserve in there. We're making improvements to the auditorium fund. We need to be able to continue operations, expand those programming dollars. As we've talked, we had a conversation with their director. And then the debt service fund, it is funded the way it is because those are your expenditures for your previous bond issues.
Previously committed to obligations.
Committed to, yes. So we're really not expanding anything there other than just making sure that we're covered in both of those funds. The library budget is the one that's been proposed to you this evening. That is also using the full assessed valuation increase. So traditionally, the state budget form would just calculate this for you using the full valuation. That's not how we did it. So this number is brought to you with the general fund being proposed on only increasing the valuation by the change in new improvements. And so again, the reason that's important is because we're using 124 million as the assessed valuation for the general fund. We're using 134 million as the assessed valuation for the other three funds. I don't want to confuse you with a lot of numbers, but I think it's important so that you know that the reason that you're seeing a decline there, and it's a true decline in the mill levy for your general fund. And we've added back only about $90,000 to your operating budget by doing this. So that in your increases overall, remember that what we've had to do to accomplish that is put on hold some of your capital expenditures, your replacement of vehicles and equipment, things like that. But we are still accomplishing all of these things that we mentioned on the previous slide. And we feel that that's very important. Again, those were our goals. We wanted to bring that to you as a place to start the conversation about the overall budget. So if you have concerns about how we put this together, we would love to hear them. If we're all in line with the way that we're thinking here, as far as that this might be the budget that we want to move ahead with, then we will bring back to you the detail for the general fund at the next meeting. Keeping in mind that on the next meeting is the 17th, we'll kind of finish up our conversation on budget overall. We can bring to you the general fund details then, but also then on the 19th, we would be asking you to commit to that total mill levy, because the 20th is the deadline for the county to get the notice for revenue neutral or to exceed the revenue neutral rate. Every year, I think we've always given you the advice since that came to be that because you don't control the final assessed valuation, this is just an estimated valuation anyway. You should always go ahead and at least approve the opportunity to exceed the revenue neutral rate because you don't control. And if you were to exceed which would be no fault of your own at that point, when it does come to the final valuation, then you could be in violation, and we don't want to do that. So at a minimum, regardless of what you decide to do with the levy rate, we definitely want to approve that for the county and get that notice to them. They will then send the notice out to everyone in our community, any address or property within the city limits. And we'll, with the established public hearing date and time and the maximum mill levy, which would be this right here. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa, one slide up, sorry. And this would be everything in that right yellow column. That would be the total of the 44.261 would be what we would be proposing right now. And so then we would hold the public hearing later in the year.
Only for publishing purposes though, correct? We can certainly have that conversation where that may come down some.
Yeah, but you
It
never
can
go
come
over.
down,
Can't go up.
cannot go up. Yes, yeah. So we are giving with that notice to the community is that that is what you intend to do, essentially. They really want this to be. The conversation is that this is what you're really considering it to be. But if we do decide to bring it down, you certainly can. So I think to circle back around, because I think we've talked about all of the other three budgets, do you feel that our approach is appropriate for the general fund?
So a couple of questions real quick. So can you explain why we would want to maintain a $2 million fund balance in the general fund?
Yeah, so remember that for a target fund balance for each of our funds, we want to maintain 20% of your expenditures. And that it's not just for your comfort level, but also for your rating agencies, your investors, all of those people. So we actually don't totally meet the 20%, but 2 million has been a comfortable number because we have other reserves, capital reserves, things like that, that could in a pinch be able to continue services or make the payments that we're obligated to already. So the 2 million is not a magic number. It just has been a number that has been used for the beginning fund balance each year. If we were to lower that number, there would be questions from your rating agency and outside investors that look to buy any future bond issues, any of those things. Also, it's an appropriate number for your general fund to be able to continue your operations. Should you have any reason why that revenue that's expected monthly not come in?
And I'm not at all suggesting that there's a lower number. I guess what I'm just asking for is an explanation of why.
Mhm.
And then if somebody says, well, hey, why don't we leave $1 million in there and drop the mill levy and save us some tax dollars or something like that. So just that suggestion,
Yes.
statement. And then my other question would be the funding of the 500,000, the compensation study results.
Mhm.
Is that funding? I'm confused. It says the results of it. So what is that 500,000 actually going to?
It would go
That's-
to increase
Okay, just
salary.
making sure.
And
Yes.
benefits.
And
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
capers, KPNF.
yes, the required payments as a result of a salary increase. Yes.
And that's what I was assuming it was for, just making sure.
Mhm. And I think as a reminder, we won't have those results until September, October of this year. So that is a number that we have pulled out of the air, quite frankly. And if we were to come in significantly less, I guarantee you there are lots of other requests that have come in for this year's budget that we weren't able to fulfill with what's been proposed here. But also if it were to come in higher than that number, we'll need to have yet a further conversation about how do we fund, or would that be in phases? How would we approach it at that point?
So Commissioner Kaler, you've been through one before. How do you feel about the 500,000? I mean, do you think it'll come in lower?
You know, I don't know, because I think that salaries are all over the place now and they're just skyrocketing. So I don't know how that's gonna go, but I do think it would be a disrespect to our employees not to put something in there.
Yeah,
And I know, I don't by any means think that, but I think that, yeah,
what I don't want to do is,
I think it's a conversation that we need to
Yeah,
have. Is
it
that
doesn't
enough?
need to be
Is that
one.
what you're saying?
I
Is
hope
that
it
enough?
doesn't have to be 1.5,
Yeah.
because then we're looking at a totally different number up there. But if 500,000 is a good start, at least that kind of gets the ball rolling.
But I mean, I'm not sure exactly where you're going with that, but if I were guessing, I would say, you know, it may not hurt to put a little additional
Yeah.
in
And
that.
that's what I was, yeah, that's exactly where I'm going.
Kind of that thought that like, you know, there's a COLA of 2%. 400,000, are we gonna come back and need 6%, where is that going to kind of sit, that total amount?
And we've discussed like a stair step approach with front loading it and then reducing it over time. So if we need a year 2 or a year 3,
Sure.
we would essentially allocate less over time to get those righted, yet at the same time minimize the compression so that we're staying current at that point in time, that those additional allocations would be made.
I don't think it would hurt us to look at what that would look like if we were to, publish it. 44.8 or 44, having a little bit extra cushion in there just for salary.
I think that's fair for sure.
Okay, so. we
44.8, you said?
I was just,
Well,
I just added. It was a rough number.
just throw in a number, okay,
Yeah,
and
just
we
throw
can
it.
do that too, we'll come back and
Yeah.
with a number that's just slightly higher in our. So what we're impacting is just your general fund mill levy right here, which is the 30.772. It is 1.75 mils less than last year's 32.522, and we can come back with something maybe slightly higher than that, just to make sure that there's some
Wiggle room.
additional dollars left in there for, compensation, so now. Okay.
Because our employees are our biggest,
Number one asset.
they are our asset. They are the reason the city runs the way it does, and certainly I think that's good to consider.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments on the general fund for Director Landis?
Like it. Bring my mill every now.
Yeah.
Good. So, and it's a little one of all those last 8 years. I mean, I know it's higher taxes, but still going in the right direction.
Thank you.
All right,
Anything else? All right, we'll bring a little bit different look at the overall budget to you at the next Monday's study session, just to talk about impact and taxes and all of those things that we normally talk about as we get towards a public hearing. It's not where we're headed next Monday, but so you can see those numbers before we do commit to the maximum number that we put in that resolution or the intent for the county, and then that's what will be published and sent to our taxpayers. Okay, thank you so much.
all right. Item C is the application for a new cereal malt beverage license with Riley Browning or Browning Barbering. Melissa, hello.
Hi, Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. The city clerk's office has received an application for a new cereal malt beverage license for on premise consumption from Riley Brownie located at 230.5 Main Street. Staff has reviewed this application and approved it, and we were just bringing it in front of you for consideration.
Commissioners? Questions, concerns? If not, you want to look at it again or move it to the 19th?
It's moving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, comments by our city manager.
I'll keep it brief as we've had a rather lengthy study session. Just want to pass along that Public Works is doing curbside pickup for limbs and debris. So individuals that have had issues with the storm, they can bring their limbs and debris to the curb, ideally placing them laterally with the curb, so that way crews can easily pick them up, and individuals that are unable to get them out in time, if they have the resources or the desire to just drop them off, they can utilize the limb and debris site that's out west of town there on 2nd Street.
Do you have an idea how long, or obviously until it's done, but
I think
Is
a
it-
week, right?
a week? Okay.
Usually takes us a week.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Comments by city commissioners, Commissioner Graves,
No comment,
Commissioner Kaler,
none at this time.
Commissioner Clayton.
I'll be brief. I actually went back and forth a lot on if I even wanted to publicly kind of in this say anything. But I do want to publicly wish my condolences to the Johnson family as he was actively running for a seat at this table. I think that's a very appropriate thing to do. Obviously we have 2 other people here or 3 other people here running. And he was the 4th person for a seat at this table. So I think mentioning that is definitely important. And so it's a huge loss for the community.
Awesome. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore.
Nothing more to add to that. It's good.
My only comments is we haven't seen each other in a while, and I just wanted to say, congratulations to all the folks who put on the fireworks display. It's wonderful. Great evening to have it. I enjoyed it. So thank you to everyone. A few announcements, study session at 4 p.m. here at City Hall, July 17th, and then our July 19th regular meeting is at 10 a.m. here at City Hall. So anything else come before the commission this evening? I'll adjourn.